Greetings from the Jazz Cloud. I'm Richie Zellon, and I want to welcome you to the Jazz Guitar channel. I don't know about you, but I've always been fascinated by the symmetrical diminished scale. And I know that this is the case with so many jazz musicians we look up to. For example, the late Pat Martino used the symmetrical diminished as the source from which he derived all his chord voicings. On the classical side, Nicholas Slonimsky explored many of its possibilities in his thesaurus of scales and melodic patterns. And you know who in jazz first derived a wealth of ideas from this book? John Coltrane. As a matter of fact, Giant Steps is based on one of Slonimsky's exercises. So I bring all of this up because a number of years back, I myself started to explore how the symmetrical diminished scale relates to Coltrane changes. I asked myself, is there a way to bridge the main notes of its three key centers using just one symmetrical diminished scale? And the answer that I arrived to from a theoretical standpoint is that even though a single diminished scale does not contain all the notes in each of the Giant Steps chords, there are at least 5 notes that are diatonic to each chord, including the 3 roots. So yes, we can superimpose a single octatonic diminished scale over those chords. Now, because Giant Steps is usually played pretty fast, it is advised that you use only 8 notes as they will rapidly fluctuate between outside and inside tones in relation to each chord. So next, let me solo over a couple of choruses of Giant Steps so you can hear the effect. And after this demonstration, I will explain what I did and also teach you some symmetrical diminished lines that you can use. So you either loved it or hated it. So here's my disclaimer. This is somewhat to be used sparingly as an additional improvisational resource. In other words, you don't want to do this on every chorus. But for those of you who are more advanced or simply want to understand the concept, let me explain the thought process. Most players use the symmetrical diminished scale in its whole half-step configuration. This makes it harder to view as a dominant, but instead more as a form of minor. So instead, I personally opt for the symmetrical diminished scale in its half-whole step configuration. It has the same notes as the whole half, only that now you can view its root as that of the dominant that resolves a perfect fifth down to your resolution chord. You can see that it's almost like an altered dominant, only that instead of a flat 13, it has a natural 13, and the fifth is also present. When viewing it as a chord, I like to think of it as a dominant 13 with the flatted 9. So with this in mind, when applying it to Giant Steps, I am superimposing a single B flat half-whole diminished over the initial 4 chords and ultimately resolving to E flat major 7. I then apply the same concept over the 5th and 6th measures, resolving back to B major 7. Now, keep in mind that because it is a symmetrical scale, for instance, instead of the F sharp being the root here, you can also think of it as an A, C, or E flat. But the most important thing is that at the point of transition to the major 7 chord, you make sure to voice lead preferably to its 3rd or 7th by stepwise motion. and this will guarantee a smooth resolution and firmly establish the home key, at least temporarily. Let me show you. So here's an eighth note based symmetrical diminished line, such as the one I used over B flat to resolve to the E flat major 7. And it goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here it is slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that would lead us from that last note, for example, to the A minor, D7 that resolves to G. So okay, here's another one, and this one's resolving to the B major. And I'm using this one over A, because if I use the one that resolves from F sharp to B, I have to play way down here. But what if I want to play up here? So here I would have to use the one that's a minor third up because it's symmetrical, right? So and it goes like this. 2, 3, 4. And for those 2 or 3 of you that are still with me, yeah, no wonder my channel isn't growing. I've got to get back to the basics. Anyhow, for the absolutely curious and adventurous, next I want to show you how I apply the symmetrical diminished over countdown. But first, I want to let you know that the diminished lines, such as the 2 I just showed you, can be applied not only to Coltrane changes, but also may be used in place of any dominant within any standard. So to help you get a jump start on some 8th note based diminished vocabulary, I have put together a study package featuring 10 lines, including the 2 I just showed you. I even include some lines using diminished triad couplings. And the download features a PDF with regular notation and tab, MP3s of all the lines, as well as a band-in-a-box file so you can practice them if you have the software. And you can download it for a small contribution from jazzguitar.richiezellin.com/premium. And you'll find it under Special Lessons. When superimposing the symmetrical diminished over countdown, I am basically using the same thought process that I did over giant steps. If you're not already aware, countdown is based on the changes to tune-up and features a succession of 2-5-1s, which again modulate over 3 key centers. And if you want a detailed analysis on what Coltrane did on countdown, please watch my video titled Coltrane Changes Demystified, and I will place a link in the description down below. Now, what I am doing on countdown, instead of playing over the 6 chords that precede each of its 3 key centers, is simply superimposing a single symmetrical diminished. Let me demonstrate. The final piece of advice in order to make this work is that you have to have a good sense of timing. By the way, I recently posted a video titled "The Most Important Element of Jazz Improvisation." In it, I demonstrate why solid rhythm and timing are the two key elements, especially when playing outside. And this is especially applicable to this lesson because when we superimpose the symmetrical diminished over Coltrane changes, we are in essence playing outside. But like Miles and so many others have echoed, there are no wrong notes. It's simply a matter of playing those dissonant notes with conviction and knowing how to smoothly resolve them. So again, for those 3 or 4 of you still with me, I'm curious to know what you think of all this stuff. Like I said earlier, it's the kind of stuff that most love or hate. Either way, I promise I'll be back with some more down-to-earth stuff in my next lesson. As usual, I appreciate your likes, comments, and welcome your questions. And if this is your first time on the Jazz Guitar channel and you enjoyed this lesson, please be sure to subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in my next lesson. Meanwhile, here's another lesson I think you'll enjoy. Be sure to practice, practice, practice. Stay safe, and may peace be with you.